fourth grade. Today we are going to be looking at not just one scene of the book that we're reading, but we're going to be looking at the whole story that we've read so far. I want to remind you that if you haven't listened to Chapter 9, Negotiation, you need to go back into Schoology and listen to that read aloud chapter before completing this mini lesson. I want us to think of the small parts of something versus the whole parts of something. We're going to use a train as an example. When you sit in a train, all you see is the carriage that you're sitting in. When in fact, that carriage unit is connected to another unit before it and possibly after it. And when you move, it isn't just our carriage that is moving, but it's the entire train. I'm telling you this because as readers, we don't just look at the page that we're reading. We know that this page is connected to a story that came before it and a story that will continue beyond it. As readers, we look across all of these pages and we connect it to an entire story. Today, I want to teach you that readers who are trying to read interpretively pay attention to whatever sticks out. But then they think, how might this part fit with the other parts? To do that thinking, they think across the whole book. When I'm looking back through chapters of Lemonade War, something interesting happens. I come across passages that really stick with me. And I want to share one of those parts that really just had this ding ding moment for me. This is from chapter 9. Evan looked at her. He missed her. He had spent the whole day by himself. It stuck. It totally stunk. If Jesse had been around and they wouldn't have been fighting with each other, they could have played air hockey or made pretzels or built a marble track with twice as many gizmos that launched the marble into the bullseye every time. This part stuck out to me because in these memories, it's very different than some of the mood that we've received earlier in the book. I'm really getting the feeling that Evan feels happy when he's sitting here in these memories with Jesse. He misses his sister and their bond. How might this part fit with other parts that we've noticed in the book? Well, I want to draw our attention to this part of the book, and it's from the beginning. I believe it's chapter 3. When her breathing had returned to normal and her fists weren't clenched at her sides anymore, she knew that what she really wanted was to get the old Evan back. The one who was so much fun to be around. The one who helped her out of every jam. So I want to think, how do these two parts connect to each other? You could say that when both of the siblings reflect on memories together, that they both find happiness in those memories, that they are better together. An important thing that might be helpful in retelling these scenes, comparing them, and growing ideas is to use these sentence stems to help you with your interpretations. I'm starting to realize da 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 da. Or you can ask yourself, what might this life lesson be that I'm learning by connecting these parts? So, what is a life lesson that we have learned from the two parts I just shared from Jesse and Evan? Well, maybe it is having someone who gets you and understands you makes your life happier. That could be the life lesson. Or maybe it's easier to just forgive someone than to continue to hold a grudge. To understand and interpret a story, readers pay attention to many components. We have to look at the characters closely. We have to look at the setting that the story takes place in. We look for important objects that continue to appear. And we're looking at the plot. When is something critical to the story occurring? We feel the feelings that the characters are feeling. And then we take all these little parts and we connect them to each other. I want to remind you that authors return to things for a reason. So when readers move from looking at one part of the story that pops out to finding another part or two more parts that connect, it increases the power of your interpretation. It will change the way that you see the book and that you learn from the book. Today, as you read in your own book, I want you to think about how to build an interpretation. So you will be reading your own book for 20 minutes, and I want to remind you on how to build an interpretation. We as readers want to read intensely. We look for patterns of our characters' actions. We might consider why the character is acting a certain way. We pay attention to the character's desires. We notice things about a character that the author repeats. We understand that characters are complicated. We read and we think about many parts of the book. We ask what the story is mostly about. We're alert to places in the text that seem important. We connect parts of the books and we think across the entire book at the bigger pictures. So then that means finally we connect ideas you've had about the book to come up with a lesson that you might have learned. Today, after reading for 20 minutes in your book, I want you to state an interpretation, something that you're starting to realize when you connect certain parts of your book. And then I also want you to come up with a life lesson that you've learned so far. Because once you are connecting the parts of your book, you should be able to have a big idea on what it is that this author is reminding you of consistently. So, have fun reading today. I can't wait to see the interpretations that you come up with.